Okay, everybody, this is my spoiler review of The Last of Us Episode 4. This again was written by Craig Mazin and directed by Jeremy Webb. So, this was actually the shortest episode by far of the season so far, and it follows a overlong hour and 15-minute episode about Bill and Frank, and we get our main two characters get their nice 45 minutes this week. Bizarre pacing choices to me and decisions on how they're kind of just spacing out time for different plot points and characters, but that's a whole other rant. I really want to focus on this episode in particular, just everything that went on in it, and that we get a big guest star in Melanie Lynskey, who has just been killing it, having a resurgence in her career, most recently for Yellow Jackets. And she's this character of Kathleen, which is not from the video games, and it's a good character they're writing into the story to kind of make sense of what you would have in video games of just gun wielding villains you fight, right? So they're kind of trying to write it into a show and make more sense of that, which is a tough task. I think they're doing a good job of that so far with this episode. And there was smaller moments I really liked in this episode. Like, I really love just the beginning with Ellie and Joel just laying in the sleeping bags out in the woods. There's this just calming, surreal feeling watching that scene, but also terrifying moment in it too. Just like that they're afraid of not just the infected, but more afraid of people out there because there's more likely to see them, but how dangerous people are. And that you feel this bond they're having with the great Ellie puns that we know from the games. So I was happy to see the puns come into play so early and that she's starting to soften up Joel here. And what also is so important about their relationship is that they're both kind of getting little hints of each other's past and learning more about each other. And that goes to Ellie has hurt someone before. We think it's the first time, but it's not. Also, that was my favorite scene in the episode for sure, that shootout and how it had the implications where Ellie had to save Joel. And these kind of decisions are going to have to keep being made in this type of world. And Joel having to see that as a kid. But it was also interesting as she was bringing up, Joel, have you killed innocent people? So this is stuff they're going to delve into clearly. And they're getting more curious about each other, but they're also getting closer. And I just like that we're getting into the meat of that relationship, right? So Craig Mazin, I've mentioned 100 times his podcast, Script Notes, is great. And he's a big believer in relationships in his writing, and relationships are the most important. So his main focus is going to be making sure that Ellie and Joel's relationship is like perfect and honors the game, but also enhances it. And I think he's definitely enhancing it so far in the show and making me really interested in it. And that's a props to Bella Ramsey and Pedro Pascal, just having a great chemistry. Whatever you want to say about their performances, what I do know watching it is that them together, their relationship is really just great. Like, again, it makes sense that they had said before the show that Bella Ramsey got the part because of how well she had clicked with Pedro and the chemistry they had. So you're seeing that in these past couple of episodes. In this episode, it really got to shine now. That was like, okay, it was the most intimate episode yet in the sense of Ellie and Joel. I also like that they're alluding to something that is in the ground. And again, I've played the games. I'm not going to spoil game stuff. Don't worry about that. But they are alluding to something in the ground with Kathleen seeing that. And we also got Tommy from the video games, the actual actor playing Kathleen's kind of sidekick here. So that was cool to see him do that. And he did a great job. And I think that it's interesting that we're left with a cliffhanger and that it's going to go into two characters that, not spoiling, but we're going to get into a very interesting part of the game. This is something that's going to land really into the game territory that is some of the best stuff. Arguably, I would say my favorite stuff from the first game is what we're going up to in this next storyline. And we're going to see it kind of how they're going to tie it together. Having said all this, it being a shorter episode, at the same time, it still felt a little thin, right? It had these nice tender moments to it, but it didn't feel the most interesting, and I think it was good. But I don't think it's when you're gonna look back and remember that episode. It is an important episode, but again, if I go to my season complaints about pacing, I feel it feels more slow than it needs to feel because we just spent an hour with two characters we'll never see again last week. So then it makes this feel a little more slow than it actually should at this point in the season. But overall, I did like this episode. So I'm going to give this one a solid 8.1. Let me know what you thought of it down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I read every comment and try to respond as many as I can. And if you can, please subscribe. This is such a competitive show to cover, so it helped me in so many ways. Like, anything you can do, I appreciate all you guys. And please follow me at Steve Varley Show on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok for more of me. And I'll see you next time.